The Allah RM went off at 7, and I was in the middle of a dream where I was closing $1 billion deal in a pair of pristine Jimmy Choos. In reality, I was Barefoot, kneeling on the cold floor of my Shaw-red appartement, with my entire wardrobe turned inside out around me, that nude patent leather heel. The one I'd saved up 3 months of freelance paychecks to buy. The one that was supposed to CARY me into the conference room of Lynn Holdings and land me the executive assistant job I'd been dreaming of since graduation. It was gone. The bathroom door clicked open, and Lynn Shawn drifted out in a cloud of jasmine-scented steam. She had a sheet mask plastered over her face, white and featureless except for the 2 eye holes. She didn't even look down at the mess I'd made. "Oh, those shoes," she said, her voice muffled by the mask. "I borrowed them yesterday. Went to a mixer at that new rooftop bar downtown." "Where are they now? Broke?" She shrugged, one shoulder rising and falling like it cost her nothing. The heel snapped. "I chucked them in the dumpster on my way back." I read at her. Behind that damp sheet mask, her face was the picture of innocence. The kind of innocence that had lived in the same apartment as me for 2 years, borrowed my clothes without asking, and once accidentally spilled red wine on my only interview blazer the night before a big callback. "Lynn Shawn, you know I have the interview today." So, she pulled the mask off and tossed it in the general direction of the trash can.
It missed.
"It's just an executive assistant position. It's not like you're going for CEO. There are a million admin jobs in this city. Go down to the convenience store, grab a pair of flip-flops for $15, and call it a day." I didn't say anything else. I just stood up, brushed off my knees, and walked out the door. The subway was packed at 8:15. I wedged myself into a corner near the doors, my toes curling against the grimy floor. Outside the train windows, the February sky was that particular shade of gray that promised sleep by noon. I watched my reflection flicker in the arcade glass. Neat blazer, pressed trousers, interview folder tucked under one arm, and 2 feet that were already rooting to turn pink from the cold. The walk from the subway station to the Lynn Holdings Tower was 300 meters. I know exactly because I counted every single step. The wind cut through the gaps in the skyscraper canyons like a blade, and by the time I pushed through the revolving doors into the marble lobby, my toes had gone from pink to numb to a concerning shade of purple. The receptionist looked up from her desk, and her professionally practiced smile froze mid-formation. "Miss you not wearing shoes?" "Wore them," I said, keeping my voice level. "They broke on the way." She read at my feet for a solid 3 seconds. I read back. Eventually, she pushed a registration form across the counter and pointed me toward the elevators without another word. The conference room on the 32nd floor was the kind of temperature-controlled that made your skin prickle. I sat in one of the leather swivel chairs and tucked both feet as under the table as they would go. Across from me, a panel of 3 interviewers flipped through my resume with the blink efficiency of people who'd done this 1,000 times before. Standard road questions. Tell us about yourself. Why Lynn Holdings? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I answered each one with the same steady voice I'd practiced in front of my bathroom mirror for 2 weeks. Then came the curveball. "Last exercise," said the lead interviewer, a RP-faced woman named Director Chin. "Sheena Rio simulation. You'll receive a customer complaint call. Handle it." A phone on the table lit up. I picked it up and pressed it to my Lynn Holdings service hotline. "How may I assist you?" The voice on the other end was low, with a rough edge to it. Like someone who'd been talking all day and hadn't had a glass of water in hours. "Lynn Holdings," he said. "Yes, sir. This is the executive office of Lynn Holdings. How may I help you today?" My voice came out steady. That was something I'd trained years ago, in college, when I joined the drama club and discovered that my speaking voice had a particular quality. Soft around the edges, breathy in the right places, with a natural cadence that made people lean in. That quality had paid the bills during my broke junior year, when I'd root a little ASMR channel on a whim. I'd read bedtime stories into a cheap USB microphone, posted them under the name Moonlight Reader, and somehow gathered 3,000 followers who said my voice helped them sleep. That was years ago. I'd stopped posting when job hunting took over my life. But the voice stayed. The other end of the line went quiet for a long moment. I could hear his breathing, slow and measured. Then he said, "Read me something." I blinked. "Sir, if you have a complaint, I can transfer you to our customer service department." Not a complaint. There was a smile in his voice now. I could hear it. "Just want to hear you talk. Read me the part from The Little Prince." Chapter 5. The one about the rose. Director Chun was watching me from across the table. She nodded, a tiny, impatient jerk of her chin. "Play along." I swallowed. Then I closed my eyes and recited from memory. It was the time when the little prince was leaving. The rose said to him, "I have been foolish. I ask your forgiveness. Try to be happy." I kept going, my voice dropping into the same rhythm I'd used for those recordings. The words came back like they'd never left. By the time I got to the last line, "You become responsible forever for what you have tamed," my BA toes had stopped curling underneath the chair and had gone completely still. Silence on the phone. Then a quiet laugh. "Thank you," he said. That was exactly what I needed. He hung up. I put the phone back in its cradle and looked at Director Chen. She was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. She pushed her glasses up her nose and said, "Wait here." 15 minutes crawled by. I sat in that leather chair and watched the minute hand on the wall clock tick around. My feet were rooting to thaw, which meant they were rooting to hurt, the cold ache turning into pins and needles. Then the conference room door opened. He walked in like he owned the place, which I would learn later he did. He was maybe 32, with dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of a charcoal gray sweater. His sleeves were pushed up to his elbows, revealing forearms that were lean and corded. But it was his eyes that got me, bright, clear, the color of peeled longan fruit. He looked like someone who hadn't slept much recently, but whatever he was running on, it was working. His gaze dropped to the floor, to the place where my feet were still tucked out of sight. Then he crouched down and looked under the table. Barefoot, he said it like a question, but there was no surprise in it. More like confirmation. Shoes broke. He stood up, nodded once, and walked out of the room without another word. I sat there with my mouth half open, trying to figure out what had just happened. He came back 2 minutes later. In his hand was a pair of navy blue men's slippers. Fleece-lined, thick-soled, the kind you'd wear if you lived in a cabin in the mountains and had a fireplace. "Put these on," he said, and placed them on the floor in front of me. I looked at the slippers. I looked at him. Then I slipped my frozen feet into them, and the fleece was so warm it almost hurt. He sat down across from me, folded his hands on the table, and tilted his head. The fluorescent lights caught the edge of his jaw, the slight stubble that he'd missed that morning. "That recording," he said. "The Little Prince." Chapter 5. He paused. "You posted it on a channel called Pillow Talk, didn't you? A little under 2 years ago. The audio quality wasn't great. You could hear traffic in the background, but the voice was unmistakable." My blood went cold, and then hot, and then cold again to that channel. I'd posted 47 recordings total. The last one had gone up the day I root seriously job hunting. I'd never shown my face, never used my real name. My profile picture was a crescent moon, and my handle was Moonlight Reader. 3,000 followers, a handful of comments on each post, and then silence. "How do you? Overtime WA he said. "Top donor on your channel." I was the one who left that comment on episode 31. This chapter got me through a 12-hour shift. "Thank you." You replied with a heart emoji. That was the only time you ever interacted with anyone. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. He kept going. "You stopped posting on a Tuesday. I remember because that night I worked until 1 in the morning. I came home, opened your channel to listen to the sleep story, and there was nothing new. So I went back and listened to all 47 episodes again. Then I sent you a private message." "A private message?" "Yeah." His mouth curved into a half smile. "You didn't read it, did you?" I figured. "Your DMs were probably flooded." But I wrote, I'm listening to the chapter about the fox right now. You said, you become responsible for what you've tamed, and your voice cracked a little. I've listened to that part 17 times. It made my shift BA rabble. 17 times, I sta read at the man across from me, the CDO of Lynn Holdings, the one who held the fate of this interview in his hands, and all I could think was, 17 times. Your interview, he said, standing up, is over. And you passed. He extended his hand across the table. I looked at it. The fingers were long, the knuckles slightly calloused. Writer's calluses, or maybe gede, are something that required precision. My name is Yu, he said. Current CEO of Lynn Holdings. Welcome to the executive office. START Monday. I didn't take his hand. I was still processing. BA refeat. The Little Prince. 17 times. The man who ran this entire company was the same one who'd kept me company in my cheap APA meant at midnight while I read stories into a microphone. Mr. Chin, I st. Call me Yu. He withdrew his hand and laughed, a low, easy sound that seemed to fill the conference room. Then he looked down at my feet, still buried in those oversized navy slippers that would have been 3 sizes too big for anyone else. One more thing, he said. You look better in person than you do on audio. And I don't say that often. He walked out, and I sat there in the empty conference room with my toes curled into the warmest pair of shoes I'd ever worn, trying to remember how to breathe. The receptionist poked her head in a few minutes later. Miss, do you need directions to the exit? No, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I need directions to the HR office. I'm STA, Rooting Monday. She blinked at me. Then she looked down at my feet, at those giant fleece slippers, and something like recognition flickered across her face. Those are Mr. Chin's personal slippers, she said slowly. He keeps them in his office for when he stays overnight. I looked down at my feet, looked back at her. Well, I said, I guess I'm keeping them now. The walk back to the subway that afternoon was different. My feet were warm. The sleet had sta rude falling, but I didn't feel it. I walked past the dumpster on the corner of my street and thought about the nude patent heels I'd thrown away. No, that Lin Shan had thrown away. Somewhere in this city, my beautiful, expensive shoes were rotting in a landfill because my roommate didn't want me to succeed. But I had a pair of slippers that belonged to a man who'd listened to my voice 17 times. Fair trade, I pushed open the door to my APA meant, and Lin Shan was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up to get the job, yeah. She snorted. Right. Without shoes. Without shoes, I agreed. And I walked past her into my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed sta ring at those navy blue slippers until the sun went down. The Little Prince said you become responsible for what you tame. I wasn't sure who had tamed who. But something had sta root in that conference room. Something rm and terrifying and completely, absolutely out of my control. And for the first time all week, I didn't hate the feeling. Monday morning came with rain and a stomach full of butterflies. I stood in front of the Lynn Holdings Tower with my interview heels in a tote bag, retrieved from that high-end club bathroom, cleaned and polished until they gleamed, and my feet in sensible flats that I'd borrowed from the neighbor downstairs. The first thing I saw when I walked into the executive office was a pair of navy blue fleece slippers sitting on my new desk. There was a sticky note attached to the left one. In handwriting that was sharp and slanted, it said, For long days. Q. I tucked the slippers under my desk and tried to ignore the heat creeping up the back of my neck. My first week at Lynn Holdings was a blur of training modules, organizational RTS, and Leah running the particle, our rhythm of the executive office. The team was small, just me, Director Chin, 2 junior assistants, and a rotating cast of interns who seemed to last about 3 weeks before burning out. Everyone moved fast, talked faster, and drank coffee like it was going out of style. On Wednesday, I met the CEO again. He walked through the outer office at 9:15, suit jacket slung over one shoulder, sleeves already rolled up to his elbows. He nodded at me in passing, then stopped, reversed 2 steps, and looked down at my feet. Flats. Mr. Yu, he corrected, and the slippers under my desk. For long days. He gave me that half smile again, The one that made his eyes crinkle at the corners and walked into his office without another word. Director Chen watched the exchange from her cubicle. She said nothing, but I saw her eyebrows move. On Thursday, I found out why. That's the new Ye, one of the junior assistants said to her friend at the coffee machine. They didn't see me standing behind the corner. I heard he just plucked her out of the interview pool.
Barefoot, up then.
She walked in with no shoes. No shoes for a CEO interview, shoved in by HR with the other candidates. Director Chen was going to cut her after the first round, but then Chinyu walked into the room and hired her on the spot. Doesn't even have a proper background check. She must have something special. Special enough to get the VIP slipper treatment. I stepped around the corner and filled my travel mug with coffee. They both went pink and scattered. The VIP slipper treatment. That night, I sat in my APA meant with my USB microphone and STA read at the blue light on my recording interface. I hadn't posted anything to the Pillow Talk channel since that night last week. The Welcome Back episode where I'd read chapter 57 and tacked on that final line. The one about the slippers. I'd checked the comments 300 times. The top one from Overtime W.A. Ryer said, "Glad you're back. This time, stay a while." I hadn't replied. I just closed the laptop and sat in the dark, trying to figure out what stay a while meant when the man behind the screen was the same one who signed my paycheck. But tonight, I opened the recording software and hit the red button. Anyway, hi there, I said into the mic. It's been a week. I'm still figuring out how to fit this back into my life. But I missed you all. And someone told me I should stay a while, so I'm trying. I read a chapter from a book I loved, something light, something about G.A. dens and spring, and the first warm day after winter. When I finished, I sat in the silence for a long moment, then added, "Good night. And if you're out there working late tonight, go home. The office will still be there tomorrow." The upload went live at 11. By midnight, it had 50 comments, and at 7 the next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Chapter 58. I'm still at the office. But I'm going home now. Overtime W.A. Ryer. I STA read at the screen. Then I typed back. "How did you get my number?" The reply came instantly. "I'm the CEO. I have access to employee records. Also, you put it on your intake form." "Isn't that a misuse of company data? Is it? I'll check with legal on Monday. In the meantime, you said to go home." "I'm going. You should get some sleep too. Big day tomorrow." I looked at the clock. It was 7:08 in the morning. I hadn't slept at all. The big day turned out to be the quarterly stakeholder presentation. The whole executive office had been in prep mode for weeks, and I'd been thrown into the deep end on day one. My job, as I read on Friday morning, was to shadow Director Chen through the entire meeting and take emergency notes in case anything went wrong with the main slides. Nothing will go wrong. Director Chen told me 10 minutes before the presentation, STA route. But if something does, you're the safety net. Don't drop the net. The conference room was packed. Investors, BOA RD members, senior executives from every division. And at the head of the table, Chinyu, in a navy suit that matched the slippers under my desk back in the outer office. He STA root the presentation with the usual opening Rema RKS, steady, confident, just enough humor to loosen the room. I stood in the corner with my tablet, watching him work. He was good, really good. The kind of good that made you forget he was only 32 and running a multi-billion-dollar company on 4 hours of sleep and whatever else he was running on. Then the slides froze. It was subtle at first, just a half-second stutter on the transition to the quarterly EA earnings report. But then the whole screen went gray. The backup monitor flickered. The AV Tech STA root, frantically tapping at his keyboard, rode the room, went quiet. Director Chen's face went the color of old paper. She looked at me. I looked at the frozen screen. Then I looked at Chinyu, who had stopped mid-sentence and was STA ring at the blank display with an expression that was either controlled calm or rely suppressed rage. I had maybe 3 seconds to act. I stepped forward. RD. Cleo read my throat and said, "If I may, the quarterly earnings data is still accessible through the backup briefs I read. I can walk everyone through the highlights while the technical team resolves the issue." All eyes turned to me. I'd spent the night before the presentation reading every single quarterly report from the past 2 years. Not because I was prepper-read, but because I couldn't sleep and the numbers were soothing. I'd printed out the backup briefs, highlighted the key data points, and tucked them into my emergency folder. That folder was in my hand now. I root talking. My voice was steady, the same voice I'd used for 47 audio recordings and one life-changing phone call. I walked the room through revenue growth, market expansion, the new product pipeline. I didn't stumble once. I didn't even look at the dead screen. When I finished, the room was silent. Then Chinu root clapping. The investors joined in. The BOA RD members. Even Director Chen, who looked like she'd just seen a ghost that had somehow saved her job. Chinu smiled at me, and there was something in that smile that made my stomach flip. "Thank you," he said, and his voice was rough again, the same roughness I'd heard on that phone call. "As you can see, the executive office is in capable hands." The AV tech fixed the screen 5 minutes later, but no one read. The rest of the presentation sailed by. And when the meeting ended and the room emptied out, Chinu caught me in the corridor. "Emergency briefs," he said. "You prepper-read backup briefs. I prepper-read a lot of things. On your third day, fourth." He laughed, that low, easy sound that I was rooting to recognize. "You're going to be a problem, aren't you?" I try to be helpful. I said problem, not helpful. He stepped closer, just enough that I could smell his cologne. Something clean and woodsy. "You didn't just fix the presentation. You saved Director Chen's performance review.
Possibly her job.
She's going to owe you forever." "I didn't do it for her." "I know." His eyes found mine and held them. "You did it because you're the kind of person who makes backup briefs on a sleepless night. I recognize that because I'm the same kind." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. He smiled again, shorter this time. "Get some sleep this weekend. Monday we're going to RT on something new." "What kind of something? You'll see." Friday night, I was supposed to meet a friend for dinner. But at 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a call from Director Chen. "Emergency," she said. "I need you at the Westin for the closing cocktail hour. Chinu needs a +1. His regular our assistant is sick." "His regular our assistant has a name, doesn't matter.
Just get there."
"We are something nice." I hung up and read in my closet. Something nice. The only thing I had that qualified was a black sheath dress that I'd bought for a friend's wedding and worn exactly once. I pulled it on, added the interview heels, the ones I'd retrieved from the dumpster, and called a cab. The Westin ballroom was a sea of crystal chandeliers and expensive perfume. I spotted Chinu the BAR, surrounded by a cluster of people in suits. He caught my eye across the crowd and lifted his glass in a small salute. I navigated through the crowd RD him, and that's when I saw Lin Shan. She was dressed in a floor-length sequined gown that probably cost more than my rent, and she was draped over the arm of a man in a bespoke suit. The man was about 50, with silver temples and the kind of self-satisfied smile that came from having both money and power. They were walking directly RD Chin. Lin Shan spotted me at the same moment I spotted her. Her eyes went wide, then narrow. She peeled herself off the silver-templed man and cut through the crowd to intercept me. "Su Wan," she said. "I didn't know you were on the guest list. I'm here with work." "Work?" She looked me up and down. "That dress is nice. Old Navy, I think I saw it on Cleo Rance." I didn't take the bait. "Who's your date?" "That's Deputy Chairman Wei. He's a close associate of my cousin's." "I'm sure you've heard of him." I hadn't, but I nodded like I had. "Anyway," Lin Shan said, leaning in with a conspiratorial smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I saw you on the news. The quarterly presentation thing. Good for you, standing up in front of everyone. Must have been terrifying." "I managed." "You managed?" She laughed. "You know, I was on the interview panel that day. The one that NEARLY cut you in the first round. I put in a good word for you, actually. Told them you had potential, even though your background was spotty." My blood chilled. "You were on the panel, of course. Did you think they'd just let anyone walk in off the street?" She patted my arm, her touch light and condescending. "Don't worry about it. We're roommates." I look out for you. She floated away before I could respond. I stood there in the middle of the ballroom, hearing her words repeat in my head. She'd been on the panel. She'd known about the interview the whole time. She'd thrown away my shoes, not out of CA realistness, but to sabotage me. And then she'd sat behind that table and watched me fumble, be a Barefoot and desperate, and said nothing. Suwon. Chinyu was beside me. He'd broken away from his cluster and materialized at my elbow. You look like you just saw a ghost. Something like that, I said. He followed my gaze to where Lin Shan was making her way through the crowd. His expression didn't change, but his voice dropped. Deputy Chairman Wei's companion. I recognize her from the security footage in the tower. She came to visit him on the 28th floor a few times. She's my roommate. He looked at me then. Truly looked. The one who threw away your shoes. How did you know? I know a lot of things. He put his hand on my elbow, very lightly, and guided me away from the crowd. Come with me. There's a balcony off the main hall. I need to tell you something. The balcony was cold and quiet. The city spread out below us in a grid of lights, and the February wind bit at my Barefoot shoulders. Chinyu shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over me without asking. Deputy Chairman Wei, he said, is positioning himself for a takeover. He's been building support on the BOA RD for months. The companion he brought tonight, your roommate, she's been feeding him information. About the executive office, about my schedule, about things that only someone with access to the inner circle would know. I swallowed. You think she's been spying through me? I think she's been using your appointment and your phone and your life to gather information she shouldn't have.
He paused.
And I think she tried to keep you from getting this job because she knew you'd be a problem for their plan. The pieces clicked together. The broken shoes. The sabotage. The suddenly convenient good word on the interview panel. She'd wanted me out of the running because I was the wild CA road. The one person who might actually help Chinyu. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't know. I know you didn't. He was close now, very close, his face half lit by the city glow. And I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because I want you to know who you're working for and what you're up against. He took my hand. His fingers were arm, calloused, steady. I'm not going to lose this company to a man who uses roommates as spies. And I'm not going to lose the only person in this building who makes me feel like I can actually sleep at night. I didn't pull my hand away. What do you need me to do? I asked. Stay, he said.
Just stay.
We'll figure out the rest. The wind blew colder, but his jacket was RM. And somewhere inside the ballroom, Lin Shan was laughing with Deputy Chairman Wei, thinking she'd already won. She had no idea what was coming. I smiled against the RK and squeezed his fingers once. Okay, I said. I'll stay. The night after the Weston Ballroom, I lay awake in my bed and STA read at the ceiling. Through the thin walls, I could hear Lin Shan's voice on the phone, low and urgent. I told you, she's just a fluke, she was saying. No connections, no background, no leverage. She doesn't know anything. A pause. Then, I'll handle it. Just keep Wei's people happy. We're almost there. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Chinyu. She's on the phone. Mentioned Deputy Chairman Wei. Says she'll handle it. He replied in 3 seconds. Recording. Can't. Too risky. Okay. Stay safe. I'm sending someone to watch the building. I sat up in bed. You're what? Too late. Already did. Get some sleep. I looked out my window. Across the street, a black sedan was parked under a dead streetlight. I couldn't see inside, but I knew it wasn't there by accident. A Monday morning, Lin Shan was gone, but her room was empty. Closet cleaned out, bed stripped, makeup stand bare. Even the jasmine body wash was gone from the shower. The landlord called me at 8 and said she'd broken her lease with no notice. She said something about personal circumstances, the landlord said. You know anything about that? No, I said. But I'm not complaining. I walked into the executive office at 9 with a cup of coffee and a new sense of CLA righty. Lin Shan was out of my appointment, but she wasn't out of the picture. Deputy Chairman Wei hadn't withdrawn his bid for BOA RD support. If anything, her DSAPE rants meant they were going underground. Director Chen summoned me to her cubicle at 10. The CEO wants to see you, she said. Her tone was clipped, professional, but her eyes were curious. Privately. His office. I knocked on Chinyu's door and pushed it open. He was standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his back to me. I could see the tension in his shoulders. He ended the call and turned around. Wei convened an emergency BOA RD meeting, he said without preamble. He's calling for a vote of no confidence. Tomorrow at 10. I set my coffee down. That fast, he's been building Taoa RD this for months. The only reason he waited was because he didn't have a solid majority. But Lin Shan's information gave him leverage. He ran a hand through his hair. He's got files. Meeting minutes, internal emails, things he shouldn't have access to. Things that make me look like I'm running this company into the ground. But you're not.
No.
But perception matters more than reality at BOA RD meetings. He sat down heavily in his chair. I need to find out what he has and how he got it. And I need to do it in the next 24 hours. I stood in front of his desk. What do you need? He looked up at me. And for the first time since I'd met him, he looked tired. I need you to help me find the leak, he said. Not Lin Shan. She was just the courier. There's someone inside this building, someone with access to the executive office, who's been feeding Wei files for months. I've been looking for them since before you arrived.
I haven't found them yet.
And you think I think you notice things that other people miss. He gestured at the slippers under my desk across the room. And I think you're the only person in this building I trust. Trust. The word landed between us like a dropped stone. Okay, I said. Tell me where to start. He pulled up a list on his computer. Every employee in the executive office with access to the internal file system, cross-referenced with every meeting Wei had attended in the past 6 months. There were 23 names. I spent the next hour cross-referencing them. Times, dates, movements. At lunch, while Chinyu was in another meeting, I went through his email logs and flagged anything that had been four-way ride to external addresses. That's when I found a pattern. Not obvious, but consistent. Every time a sensitive file was accessed by the executive office, an anonymous external email account received a summary within 48 hours. The email was always sent from a server that routed through 3 different countries before hitting its final destination. But the account that accessed the files, it was always the same one. And it belonged to someone who'd been on the executive office staff for 4 years. I sat back in my chair and looked at the name. Brian Zhao. Senior Administrative Coordinator. Quiet, efficient, never caused any trouble. The kind of employee you'd never suspect because he didn't draw attention to himself. I pulled up his personnel file. 4 years of clean performance reviews. No disciplinary reactions. No suspicious activity flags. The perfect spy. I called Chinyu. I found him. Who? Brian Zhao. I sent the link to the evidence. He's been 4-way writing files to an external account for 6 months. Clean, regular, are undetectable unless you know exactly what to look for. There was a long pause on the other end. Then he said, "Stay where you are. I'm coming down." By the time he reached my desk, I'd already pulled every bit of evidence I could find. The email logs, the access timestamps, the server routing. It was airtight. Brian Zhao, he said, studying the screen. He's been here since before I took over. Wei must have planted him. Or he was always loyal to Wei and just biding his time. Chinyu looked at me. What do you want to do? What do you mean? This is your find. You get to decide how we handle it. I thought about it. The BOA RD meeting was tomorrow. If we fired Brian Zhao now, Wei would know we were onto him. He'd find another way. But if we kept Brian in place and fed him false information, let's use him, I said. Let him keep sending files. But we control what he sends. Chinyu's mouth curved into that half-smile again. I knew there was a reason I hired you. Because I walked in Barefoot. Because you think like me. That night, we stayed in the office until past midnight. I helped Chinyu draft a set of fake internal documents, financial projections that looked legitimate but were subtly flawed in ways that would undermine Wei's argument at the BOA RD meeting. We embedded enough actual data to make them convincing, but the key numbers were wrong. Brian Zhao accessed them at 3 a.m. I knew because I'd set a silent notification on his account. The trap was set. At 9 the next morning, I walked into the Boa Road room with Chinyu. The room was packed. Boa Road members, senior executives, legal counsel. At the FAR end of the table sat Deputy Chairman Wei, silver-haired and smug, with Lin Shan's cousin's face beside him. Wei smiled when he saw me.
Misu.
I've heard so much about you. My associate speaks very highly of your initiative. Thank you, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I try. The meeting began. Wei laid out his case against Chinyu with practiced precision. Operational inefficiencies.
Declining margins.
A pattern of poor decision-making. He passed around printed packets with CHA RTS and graphs, all drawn from the files Brian Zhao had been stealing for months. Chinyu listened without interrupting. When Wei finished, he stood up and said, "Thank you for that thorough presentation. I have a few documents of my own to share." He projected the fake files onto the screen. The room went quiet as the BOA RD members studied the numbers. I watched Wei's face. At first, he looked confused, then puzzled, then the smug smile sta route to slide. "These numbers don't match my data," Wei said slowly. "That's strange." Chinyu replied, "Because my data comes directly from our internal systems. The same systems your data supposedly came from." Wei's eyes route around the room. He was a SMA RT man. He knew when he'd been outmaneuvered. "Someone has been feeding me inaccurate information," he said. "Someone has been feeding you stolen information," Chinyu corrected. "The source is the same. The difference is that my data is real. Yours has been adjusted. Probably by the same person who's been intercepting confidential files and passing them to external parties for months." Wei's face went pale as I stepped forward RD and placed a folder on the table. Inside were printouts of the email logs, the access timestamps, the server routing. Everything we'd found. "Deputy Chairman Wei," I said, "your source is Brian Zhao, Administrative Coordinator. He's been four-way writing executive office files to an external account since October. We've had him under surveillance since yesterday. He accessed a set of files at 3 a.m. this morning. Those files were planted." The BOA RD members exchanged glances. A low murmur spread through the room. Wei stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "This is a setup." "Is it?" Chinyu's voice was calm. "Then explain why Brian Zhao has your personal email address saved in his contacts. Explain why his external four-way writing account traces back to a server that's registered under your nephew's name. Explain why, when we searched his home this morning, we found RD copies of memos that only you and I should have seen." Wei had nothing to say. He sat back down, deflated. The BOA RD voted 15-2 against the no-confidence motion. Deputy Chairman Wei was censured and stripped of his committee positions. Brian Zhao was escorted out of the building by security. The meeting ended at 11:30. I stood in the empty BOA Road room. STA rang at the scattered packets of documents and the empty chairs. Chinyu came up behind me. "You were incredible," he said. "I just followed the trail." "You followed it right into the center of a coup and walked out on the other side." He turned me to face him. "I don't think you understand what you've done.
You didn't just save my job.
You saved this company from becoming someone else's toy." I looked up at him. The high windows cast gray light across his face, softening the sharp lines of his jaw. "Was that the thing you needed me to stay for?" I asked. "No." He shook his head. "I told you. I just needed you to stay. Period." I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my cheek, warm and light. "Come to dinner with me," he said. "Tonight. Not a work thing. Just dinner." "Chinyu."
Sugwan.
I laughed. "You're not going to take no for an answer, are you?" He smiled. "Did you take no for an answer when you walked into my interview, Barefoot?" I sta read at him. Then I laughed again. "Harida this time." "Fine," I said.
"Dinner."
"But I'm wearing my shoes this time." "Whatever you want." He took my hand, laced his fingers through mine. "As long as you show up." That afternoon, I went back to my apartment and changed out of my work clothes. For the first time in weeks, The APA rement was quiet. Empty. No Lin Shan, no mysterious phone calls, no lurking threats, just me, a pair of high heels, and a date with a man who'd listened to my voice 17 times. I stood in front of the mirror and applied lipstick. Red, the kind that meant business. The doorbell rang at 7. I opened it to find Qin Yu in a charcoal sweater and a arcade jeans, holding a single white peony. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." We walked out into the night, and I didn't look back. Dinner was at a small place tucked into an alley that didn't have a name. No sign out front, just a arcade wooden door with a brass handle shaped like a crescent moon. Qin Yu held it open for me, and I stepped inside to find a room lit entirely by candles. There were only 4 tables. Ours was in the corner, by a window that looked out onto a tiny courtyard with a single cherry tree. The branches were Barefoot in the air, but someone had strung tiny white lights through them, and they glowed like distant stars. "Your ASMR channel had a crescent moon for an avid AR," I said, settling into my chair. "And a cherry tree on your desk in the office. Is this your favorite place, observant?" He sat across from me and poured water from a ceramic bottle. "I bought this restaurant 3 years ago. It was going to close down. I couldn't let that happen." "Why not?" "Because I came here the night after my father died." He said it simply, like he was talking about the weather. I sat at that table over there, ordered the same thing I'd ordered 100 times before, and I realized I couldn't taste anything. But the owner brought me a bowl of soup and sat with me for an hour, without saying a word. I never forgot that. I looked at the Barefoot cherry tree, and the string lights, and the quiet candle glow. "Thank you for bringing me here," I said. He smiled. "Thank you for letting me." The food came in courses, small, delicate plates that tasted like they'd been made by someone who read about every ingredient. We talked about nothing and everything. His childhood, his father's legacy, the weight of stepping into a company that had been built by someone else. I told him about my mother, who'd raised me alone and worked 3 jobs so I could go to college, and how she died the year I graduated. I root the ASMR channel to deal with the insomnia. I admitted. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. So I root talking to a microphone, pretending someone was listening. Someone was. I know that now. He reached across the table and touched my hand. Just his fingertips, light, and warm. The rest of the evening passed like a dream. When the last course was clear red, we walked out into the night and stood under the cherry tree in the courtyard road. The string lights flickered above us, casting tiny shadows across his face. "Su-Wan," he said, "I have something to tell you." I waited. "The night I sent that private message, the one you didn't read, I wasn't just thanking you. I was telling you something I never told anyone." He took a breath. My father had just died. The company was in chaos. Everyone wanted something from me, and I had nothing left to give. I sat in my APA at 2 in the morning, and I listened to your voice, and I thought, if I can just hold on until tomorrow, maybe it'll be okay. "Qin Yu, don't say anything. Just let me finish." He stepped closer. "I listened to your voice for 2 years before I ever met you. I knew you before you knew me. And when you walked into that interview Barefoot, I didn't hire you because I recognized your voice. I hired you because you walked in Barefoot and didn't apologize for it. You showed up anyway. You showed up, and you didn't make excuses. That's who I needed in my life. That's who I still need." The cherry tree rustled above us, branches scraping against the cold air. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Say you'll stay." He put his hand on my cheek, tilting my face up to his. "I'm not asking you to love me. Not yet. I'm just asking you to stay." I looked at him, at his tired eyes and his steady hands, and the way he'd kept a restaurant alive because a stranger had given him soup on the worst night of his life. "Okay," I said. "I'll stay." He kissed me then, light and soft, like the first day after winter. A week after dinner, Lin Shan surfaced again. I was in the break room when I saw her on the local news. She was standing outside a courthouse, wearing a navy blazer and looking distinctly uncomfortable. The caption read, "Former Lin Holdings associate testifies in corporate espionage case." I watched the segment with my coffee halfway to my mouth. The reporter asked her questions about Deputy Chairman Wei and the stolen files. Lin Shan gave clipped, CA-refull answers. She looked smaller than I remembered. Less certain that evening, Qin Yu called me to his office. Lin Shan's cooperating with the prosecution, he said. She's been granted immunity. She's giving testimony about Wei's operation in exchange for leniency. Will it hold? It'll hold. She's got records. Emails, meeting notes, photographs. She was thorough, I'll give her that. She just backed the wrong horse. He leaned back in his chair. Wei's facing federal charges. He won't be a problem anymore. I sat down across from him. What happens to Lin Shan? She'll probably get probation. Maybe a fine. She's young. She was manipulated by her cousin. She's cooperating. The judge will go easy on her. I nodded. I should have felt satisfied. Justice, after all. The woman who'd stolen my shoes and sabotaged my interview was now a witness in a federal case. But I didn't feel anything except a strange, quiet emptiness. I'm not glad, I said. That's weird, right? I should be glad.
No.
Qin Yu came around his desk and crouched in front of me. You're not glad because you're not that person. You never were. That's what makes you different from them. They built their lives on taking things. You built yours on showing up. I looked at him, crouched there in front of me like he was about to propose or tie my shoelaces. Get up, I said. You're the CEO. You can't kneel on the floor. He laughed. You're the one who taught me that sometimes you have to get low to see what's really there. I taught you nothing. You were already like this. Maybe. He stood up and pulled me to my feet. But you made it okay to be like this. The thing about victories I reneged was that they often came with aftermath. The BOA RD was stable again. The coup had been crushed. But the executive office was still adjusting to the shift in power. Director Chen was more cautious than before, triple-checking every document that left her desk. The junior assistants stopped gossiping and STA route working. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the next crisis. Except Qin Yu. He was calmer than I'd ever seen him. On the third Friday after the BOA RD meeting, he called me into his office and shut the door. I'm stepping back, he said. From what? From the day-to-day. I'm appointing a new CEO to handle operations. I'll still be the CEO, but I'm going to focus on strategy. Big picture stuff. I read at him. You're slowing down.
I'm stopping.
He smiled. Not stopping working. Just stopping the 12-hour days. The endless meetings. The sleeping in my office. He gestured at the navy slippers, now parked neatly under his desk. I've done that for too long. I don't want to do it anymore. Why now? He walked around his desk and sat on the edge, facing me. Because I met someone who taught me that showing up is different from burning out. And I realized I'd rather show up for her than burn out for them. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Qin Yu, I'm not asking you to move in. I'm not asking you to ROI me. I'm just telling you my plans. Because you're part of them. He took my hand. If you want to be. I squeezed his fingers. I'm still on my probation period. He laughed. That low, easy sound I'd come to love. I'll extend it. Indefinitely. That weekend, I went back to the recording studio. My bedroom, with my cheap USB mic and the blue light on the interface. I hadn't posted in 2 weeks. The comment section was filled with people asking where I'd gone. I hit record. Hi everyone, I said. I've been busy. Really busy. But I'm here now. And I want to tell you something. I paused. The red light blinked at me. I met someone, I said. Someone who listened to my voice for 2 years before we ever spoke in person. Someone who gave me a pair of slippers when I had no shoes. Someone who told me it was okay to stay. I took a breath. I'm going to stay. Not just here in this channel, but in real life too. I'm going to stay because I finally found a place where I'm not just showing up, I'm wanted. I closed the recording and posted it without listening back. But when I checked the comments an hour later, the top one was from Overtime WA Ryer. Good, it said. Because I'm not going anywhere either. The next morning, I walked into Lin Holdings and found a new pair of slippers on my desk. Pink this time, with fuzzy little moons embroidered on the toes. And a note in that Shah RP, slanted handwriting. For long days. And weekends. And evenings. And breakfasts. Q. I put them on and walked into his office. Pink, I said, matches your application folder. I looked down at my feet. The pink fuzz was ridiculous. I loved them. You're ridiculous, I said. You make me that way. He came around the desk and kissed me. In the office. In the middle of the workday. With the door half open and the entire executive office definitely watching. Everyone's going to see. I mumbled against his mouth. Good, he said. Let them. I pulled back and looked at him. Tired-eyed, steady-handed, cinnamon-scented Chinyu, who'd listened to 47 audio recordings and kept a restaurant alive because someone gave him soup. You know, I said, you still owe me a private message reply. He looked confused. What, your private message? The one you sent 2 hours ago. Thanks for your voice, or whatever it said. I stepped closer. I want to reply to it now. He waited and I kissed him again, longer this time. Thank you, I said, for waiting, for listening, for the slippers, and for staying. Funny, he said, that's exactly what I was going to say. We stayed in his office until the sun went down, and no one came to bother us. The slippers were warm, the city lights were bright, and for the first time in a long time, neither of us was running out of time to say what needed to be said. That night, I moved my microphone to his appointment. He asked me to. 6 months later, I woke up in a bed that wasn't mine and felt something small and warm press into my side. Did I open my eyes? The room was flooded with morning light, and Chinyu was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching me with that half-smile I'd memorized. You snore, he said. I do not. You do. Little puffs. Like a kitten. I shoved a pillow at his face. He caught it and tossed it aside, then leaned down and kissed my forehead. Happy 6-month anniversary, he said, and I blinked. Is that today? That's today. And I have something for you. He reached into the nightstand and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. He opened it, and inside was a key. A plain silver key, nothing fancy, attached to a keychain shaped like a crescent moon. This is for the apartment upstairs, he said. I bought the unit above mine. It's got a recording studio. Soundproofed. Professional equipment. The works. He paused. I figured if you're going to stay, you might as well have a proper place to record. I read at the key. Then at him. Then at the key again. You bought me a recording studio. I bought us an upstairs. The studio is just a bonus. I sat up so fast the sheets tangled around my legs. Chinyu. You can't just buy an entire apartment because I need a place to record. Watch me. He smiled that ridiculous smile. It's already done. The soundproofing is installed. The mic is a Newman. I did my research. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. You're insane. Insanely in love with you, yes. I've established that. I kissed him then, hard enough that he fell back against the pillows. The key pressed into my palm, cold and real. I still haven't replied to your private message. I said when we came up for air. You have the rest of your life. Promise, he looked at me, eyes bright and steady. Promise. The recording studio was everything he said it would be. Soundproofed walls, treated corners, a professional microphone stand, and a chair that actually supported my back. I spent the first hour just touching everything, running my fingers over the equipment like it might disappear. Chinyu watched from the doorway. Happy, he asked. So happy it's stupid. I admitted. Then it's perfect. That night, I sat down in the new studio and hit record for the first time. Hey, Pillow Talk, I said. I'm back. And this time, I have something really special to Shari. I got a new studio. It's soundproof. I can scream if I want to. Not that I will, but the option exists. I paused, laughing at myself. Actually, I do have something to say. Something important. A few months ago, I was sitting in a conference room Barefoot, trying to get a job I didn't think I'd get. And a man walked in with a pair of slippers and changed everything. Not because he gave me the job. Not because he was rich. Because he saw me Barefoot and didn't ask me to explain myself. I took a breath. That's the thing about being seen. You don't always know it's happening until it's already done. And then you realize you've been waiting for it your whole life. I recorded for 3 hours that night. Stories, poems, random thoughts. When I finally stopped, I had 12 new episodes ready to go. Overtime W.A. Ryer was the first to comment on every single one that I didn't have to check. I already knew he would. We got ma ride in the courtyard of the restaurant, under the cherry tree. It was spring now, and the branches were heavy with pink blossoms that drifted down like confetti. I wore my interview heels, the same nude patent leather pair Lin Shan had thrown in the dumpster, and Chinyu wore a charcoal suit with navy sneakers. The slippers are under my desk, he said when I asked about the shoes. I'm saving them for next winter. You're saving shoes you gave me? I'm saving everything you've ever touched, he said, and his eyes were so earnest that I root laughing and couldn't stop. There were about 30 people at the wedding. Director Chen, who was now a BOA RD member. The junior assistants, who'd stopped gossiping, and root actually being helpful. A few of my old followers from Pillow Talk, whom I'd invited on a whim. Even the restaurant owner, who cried the whole ceremony. And Lin Shan, she came at the last minute, alone, in a simple blue dress. I saw her hovering at the back of the courtyard RD and walked over to say hello. You came? I said, I thought I should. She looked awkward RD, hands twisted together. I know I don't have the right, but I wanted to say congratulations. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. She looked at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, there was no mask behind her eyes. I was jealous, she said. You were always so put together, even when you had nothing. And I was so busy trying to look like something I wasn't that I forgot how to be real. She swallowed. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. For the shoes. For everything. I stood there in my white dress and my interview heels and thought about all the nights I'd lain awake in that Shaw-Red apartment, wondering why she'd done it. Thank you, I said. That means something. She nodded, bit her lip, and walked away. I watched her go, and I felt something loosen in my chest. Chinyu Ape read at my side and slipped his hand into mine. You okay? Yeah, I said. I think I just closed a chapter. He followed my gaze to where Lin Shan was to sape ring into the crowd. You handled that with more grace than I could have. That's because you're a CEO, and I'm just a voice on the internet. Correction. He pulled me close. You're my voice on the internet. And my wife. And the person who walked Barefoot into my conference room and made me believe in timing. The cherry blossoms fell around us, pink and soft. The honeymoon was a week in a small coastal town where no one knew our names. We rented a cottage with a porch swing and a view of the ocean. I woke up every morning to the sound of waves and Chinyu making terrible coffee in the tiny kitchen. Your coffee is awful, I told him on the third day. That's why I keep you around, he said. To tell me the truth. I threw a pillow at him. He caught it. It was becoming a pattern on the last night. We sat on the porch swing and watched the sun melt into the water. The sky turned orange, then pink, then a deep violet that made everything feel stilled. Su-wan, he said, do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd worn shoes that day? I thought about it. The interview panel, the conference room, the phone call, and the voice that recognized me. If I'd worn shoes, I wouldn't have needed the slippers, I said. And I wouldn't have known you listened to every single episode of my channel 17 times. 18 now, he said. I listened to the wedding episode you posted 4 times. Which one? The one where you said I do in your recorded voice. He smiled. I played it during the ceremony. You couldn't hear it because you were too busy looking at me. I read at him. You played my voice at our wedding, just the part where you said yes. He was unrepentant. I wanted to hear it twice. Once from you, once from the speakers.
I'm greedy.
I put my head on his shoulder and watched the stars come out. You're ridiculous, I said. You ma ride me anyway. Best mistake I ever made. He laughed and kissed the top of my head. The waves crashed in the distance, and the wind smelled like salt and coming spring. When we got back to the city, I had 30,000 followers on Pillow Talk. Overtime W.A. Ryer was still my top donor, and now he was also my legal spouse, which made the donation metrics a little complicated, but the romance metrics off the charts. I posted a new episode titled The Slipper Chronicles. In it, I told the whole story. The interview, the BA refeat, the CEO, and the voice recognition, the BOA RD meeting and the coup and the cherry tree. I told it like a bedtime story, soft and wah rm and true. By morning, it had 100,000 listens. Chinu called me from the office at 8. You broke the internet, he said. I broke the internet. The Pillow Talk episode is trending on 3 social platforms. The company PR department just sent me a memo asking if we need to issue a statement. What did you tell them? I told them the statement was, my wife is very talented and I'm proud of her. He paused. The PR head asked if she could quote that. I laughed so hard, I dropped the phone after that. Things got quiet in the best way. The company hummed along. Chinu's new CEO was competent and efficient, which meant he came home at 6 most nights. I recorded episodes in my new studio and watched my follower count climb. We ate dinner together, bickered about what to watch on television, and fell asleep in a bed that smelled like both of us. On our first anniversary, he gave me a new pair of slippers. White this time, with small embroidered foxes on them, because you tamed me, he said. Did I? Completely. I put them on and walked into the studio. And for the very first time, I recorded not for strangers, not for comfort, not for anyone but myself. Hi, Q, I said. In case you're listening, I stayed. I'm still staying. And I'm going to stay until the story ends. I paused, but stories don't really end, do they? They just turn into new chapters. He was standing in the doorway by the time I finished. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He just pointed at his feet, where he'd put on his own pair of white fox slippers. Matches, he said, and I looked at my feet. At his feet. At the two of us in our ridiculous matching slippers, in a soundproof studio, in an apartment above a restaurant with a cherry tree. Perfect match. I agreed. He walked over and took my hand. Come on, he said. I'm making dinner. Terrible coffee included. I let him lead me out of the studio, out of the apartment, out into the warm spring night. Behind me, the recording light blinked off. Ahead of me, the cherry tree was in full bloom, and under my feet, the softest pair of slippers I'd ever owned, rang me home.